Once upon a time, there were 4 people who went on an adventure to Budapest. They visited St Stephen's Basilica. Looking around the church, they thought it was outstanding and very beautiful scenery. The next day, the 4 people went to the fisherman's bastion, looking over the Danube River. They thought it was amazing and thought it was fantastic. The weather was beautiful and they had some lovely food. The following day, the 4 people went to visit the Hungarian National Museum. They thought had some lovely paintings. However, the 4 people weren't to know that taking photos was forbidden. So the person who worked in the Hungarian National Museum, they asked the 4 people to stop taking photos on their phone off the artwork because it was not allowed in the Hungarian National Museum. The 4 people couldn't understand what was being said to them because they were speaking Hungarian. The 4 people really struggled to speak any Hungarian whatsoever, so a translator had to step in to translate what the person in the National Museum was saying to them. They eventually were able to understand what they were told about not taking any photos in the Hungarian National Museum. The 4 people, they felt satisfied and understood they weren't allowed to take any photos, so they kept looking around the National Museum at the artworks. They thought it looked really impressive and thought it looked really good. They had a packed lunch sat on the grass before they planned what they would do next. They decided they would go to Hungarian Parliament building and then have an ice cream before they went back to their apartment where they were staying for a week. Before the following week, they would head on to Santod for the last adventure of their holiday. Later that afternoon, the 4 people, they had lovely ice cream before they went back and settled down at their apartment for the night. As the day drew to a close, they headed back to their apartment, which they were staying in. They had a lovely meal before they would watch television and then go to bed later that night. They settled down and went to bed. The next morning, they woke up and had a really lovely continental breakfast before they planned what to do. They planned on going to the Matthias Church. The 4 people knew they would not be allowed to take any pictures, so they didn't try to take any pictures in case anybody would stop them taking photos, like what happened when they went to the Hungarian National Museum. The 4 people then decided after they had been around the Matthias Church, they would then buy a pack of postcards to send to their friends and families as their time in Budapest was to come to an end. Before they headed on to Santod for a couple of days, before they would return for the night back to Budapest. Before the 4 people fly back to London, the Stansted. The 4 lads, they finished their adventure in Budapest by going on the Danube. Now the 4 people, they started their journey to Santod. They would go on a boat trip to Tihany, where they would visit a really nice church. The 4 people, they loved the boat trip to Tihany. They thought it was really nice and they would really feel sad to have to back. Yeah, they would really feel really sad to have to go back to their home of England. However, they would not rule out the prospect of coming back on holiday again to Hungary in the future. Later that evening, the 4 people went back to the house where they would go in the swimming pool for swimming. Then they would do their work out. They'd follow off their laptop. The following day, they would visit Balaton Folva, where they would buy an ice cream before going on to Balaton Edred. They decided to try some Hungarian food from the market, and they thought the food was delicious. They would take a photo on their phone and send the photo to their families. However, things were going to go wrong. However, things were going to go wrong. One of the 4 people, a dog lost control and chased after one of the 4 people. This would be a really scary experience of the owner of the German Shepherd, would lose control of what they were doing. Was nothing short of abysmal. Why would they not put their dog on a lead? The next hour would explode into life. The 4 people decided to have a campfire where they were staying when the neighbour would try and refuse them having a campfire. The neighbour who really struggled to communicate with the 4 people. However, luckily the 2 of the people, they were very fluent in Hungarian and they spoke to the neighbour and they tried to compromise because they understand the neighbour might not want them to have a campfire. However, the neighbour told them if they go to the park in the centre of Santod, they would be able to have a campfire. So the 4 of them, they agreed with the neighbour that they would go to the park in the centre of Santod to have their campfire, so they didn't annoy the neighbour because they know the neighbour needed to have an early night because the neighbour had to be at work. So so it had to be at work early, sorry, so they went to a park in the centre of Santa, and the four of them sat around the campfire and they sang Oasis, Don't Look Back in Anger. Later that evening, they went back to their apartment and went to sleep. The next day, the four people went to Corrasheggy to have a look at the aerial view. They visited the church where one of the four friends had a stroke. So the three friends, they had to rush one of the friends to the hospital as his condition was really severe. The next day, the three friends named Connor Richards, Alexander Dell Simon, Ricky Martins went to visit their friend Pascal Zabaleta. They were all aged between 24 and 25. Connor Richards was a student from Bristol at Bristol University studying law. Alexander Dell Simon, Ricky Martin studied at the University of Bath studying nursing, and Pascal Zabaleta was a student at the University of Paris studying chemistry. They went to visit Pascal. They went to visit Pascal Zabaleta, who was conscious. He was responding when the nurses were treating him. He had suffered a stroke when they went to Corrasheggy. Pascal Zabaleta had to spend the night in hospital before he would be allowed to reunite with Connor Richards. Alexander Del Simon and Ricky Martins. The next day, the three of them without Pascal Zabaleta until he would be allowed to return back to the house. Decided to play a game of cards. They received a phone call from Pascal Zabaleta, who told them that his condition was improving and that he would be coming home tomorrow to spend the last day of their adventure in Santa before they would go back to Budapest for one night, before they would fly back to London, Stansted, and then Connor Richards would take the train back to Bristol Temple Meads. Alexander Del Simon and Ricky Martins would take the train back to Bath Spa, and then Pascal Zabaleta would catch the train to London St Pancras before he would then catch the train to London St Pancras before he would then catch the train to London St Pancras before he would catch the Eurostar to Paris Nord. The three lads played a game of cards, and then they had an early night because the next day they were travelling back. They were travelling to Budapest on the Underground. The next day, Pascal Zabaleta arrived back at the house. Now the four friends were reunited. Pascal Zabaleta was feeling a lot better. His condition was much better. The four of them travelled on the Underground back to Budapest. They visited Matthias Church. And thought that the church was really special. On the final leg of their adventure, they went to the Gellert Baths. They had a really lovely time in the Gellert Baths. Later that afternoon, the four people, they went to look round the market and they saw some lovely food which looked really tasty. The four friends stayed in a hotel near Matthias Church. They had an early night because they were going home the next day back to Stansted. But then they are heading off in different directions. Two are going back to Bath, one is going back to Paris, and the other is going back to Bristol. The next day, the four friends packed their luggage and boarded the bus back to the metro and caught the plane from Budapest. They landed back in Stansted. Then the four of them made their own way home. Two of them got the same train back to Bath. The other one got the train to Bristol, and the other one, he caught the train back to London St Pancras, and then went on the Eurostar back to Paris. The end, Sam Jenkinson. Yeah, it's finished.
Turn your phone off, man.
Yeah.